Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We will begin shortly, but before we begin, I'd like to make a few announcements. First, if you would like to address the governing board today, we have kiosks that are located outside in the lobby, and you can sign up to comment on a particular board agenda item out there, and if you need any assistance, we have people out there to help. Also, please watch the screen, and you will see your name posted. Please be prepared to come to the podium when your name comes up to the top. Please keep the back wall of the auditorium clear at all times per our fire code. And in the event of an emergency, please follow directions. If we need to exit, please exit to the rear of the room. During an earthquake, you can drop in cover in front of your seat or lean forward as much as possible. And if we need to shelter in place, remain so until directed by South Coast AQMD staff. So thank you. The governing board meeting will begin shortly.
District, can everybody hear me? Yeah, okay. I'd like to start out by having Supervisor Perez, who looked into my eyes, lead us in again. He did such a great job in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please, Supervisor.
Please join me in saluting our nation's flag, ladies and gentlemen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Do we have any board member comments to start this morning? Councilmember Robinson got you first, and then Judy Mitchell.
I'll be really brief. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mayor Mitchell, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to express just what an honor it was to have some of the staff come out, as well as Assemblywoman Garcia, Board Member Mitchell here, visit my business in May, and it was a great honor again for me to be able to kind of talk about, from a business perspective, some of the challenges that are being faced by businesses trying to meet some of the standards that are coming into place, and also talk about how electric trucks and hydrogen might find their way into the ports. So it was a pleasure. Glad everyone got a chance to come out and visit, and you're welcome anytime, any of you. So that's all I had.
Can everybody hear out there? Fine? Okay. Supervisor Bartlett?
Thank you, Chair Burke. So as part of being a new member in AQMD, I've had the pleasure of starting to take a lot of the tours that I think are requisite in order to really get a good feeling for what the industries are like out there. So over the last 30 days, I've had an opportunity to have a facility visit and tour at Chevron in El Segundo, and also the CMC steel mill in Rancho Cucamonga. Just wanted to report that out. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Mitchell?
I just wanted to mention that last week I attended the luncheon given by the Clean Air Coalition and the Coalition for Clean Air, and want to mention that one of the honorees is Vic De La Rosa, who operates trucking fleet down in the ports, has been a real hero for us in being adventurous and wanting to try out the new technologies in the ports, both fuel cell trucks as well as battery electric. So thank you to Coalition for Clean Air for recognizing these people and for a wonderful event.
Board Member Cacchiotti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of photos, and I want to thank staff for, again, planning the Bike to Work Day this year. Got some great pictures here of staff that participated. Even I understand the executive director rode his bike. I saw him there. I understand he had a phalanx of people following him so he didn't get hurt. But I think we should all have but it was a great day, and this was some of the pictures of the event. And I hope more and more staff participate. Maybe we'll get some board members participating next year. Ben Bonite driving in from Riverside. But it was a wonderful day. And again, I think Ben was the only. Wayne was the only guy from executive staff. So I'm going to look at Matt, Phil, by everybody participating next year. This is we're doing this electric lawnmower exchange program for commercial gardeners. And this is our park in South Pasadena, our signature park, where we started the program, become the first park in the United States to go all electric. And this is the morning of a couple weeks ago where this is a large 60-inch all-electric riding lawnmower, and you see the backpacks over there attached being charged for backpack blowers. So this is once or twice a week in the morning. They get there early, they charge them up, and then that lawnmower will finish an 8 or 9 acre parcel in 2 hours. It goes really fast. It's like the cars, the evolution of electric cars. It's so fun, quiet. You feel it's like a vacuum cleaner at 8 o'clock in the morning. This is a picture last week. I took at some event at the, do you recognize that guy? I think they caught him off guard on his birthday party or something like that at the retreat. There's Bill and his wife surprising him, and people in the background, so caught him off guard. Next. And this was, we did another Open Streets event, and I want to thank AQMD for being there as Rainbow. And this one was for South Pasadena, Alhambra, and San Gabriel. And this is, you see the streets where we closed it down to no cars. And 2 years ago, we did the largest one in North America from South Pass through 7 cities in the county, all the way out to Azusa Pacific University and the Gold Line. I was riding home. I ride home from the Attorney General's office every week and to the train in Little Tokyo. And about 6:30 or 7, I was riding down the street, and I looked, and that guy looked familiar. And there was so I saw Dr. Phil Fine, and what's the gentleman's name, Phil? Mark Carroll at an event and what's the name of the group? Breathe LA. So they were downtown LA in a gritty part of the section, and just grabbed a quick picture. Phil decided to take a moment break. Next. And that's it. And just one comment, Mr. Chair. I try to bring up the date every year or so. I've got the original Toyota Prius that came out in 2002. It's beat up. I've changed my battery. And the battery was guaranteed for 10 years or 100,000 miles. I got 13 years and 130,000 miles out of my battery. And I want to let you know I got to 160,000 miles last week. In the last 5 years, I hardly drive it because I ride the bike or take the train or bus. But I checked the brakes, and I still have not spent 1 penny on brakes or rotors. 160,000 miles. So when we look at whether it's cars or lawnmowers and things like that, over the life of that vehicle or equipment, you're going to save tens of thousands of dollars. So I've already calculated from my prior Audi, which was a beautiful car, this ugly Prius, I've saved about $10,000 in gas, Lost a couple girlfriends over those years because they didn't like the car, but I've never spent a penny on brakes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You know, I sent my daughter's best girlfriend down to that shop that you recommended to me to change the battery in her car. And she has just been saying nothing but wonderful things, that she was in and out in less than an hour or so, and that they charged her like 1/3 of what she thought she was going to pay. She said it was just amazing. So you're shopping in the right place. All right, Mr. Nastri, you're up.
Thanks, Dr. Burke. As you all are familiar with our mobile phone app, you may not be familiar that we continue to garner accolades and awards. And most recently, we just received the Special Districts Award. There are only 9 awards awarded, and we received 2 of those for our smartphone app. And this is Ron Moskowitz. It's also Jin Chen and Jimmy Lee. And kudos to them for their work in that. And then, as you know, it's not just enough to have the app, but it's important that people are aware of that app. And to that extent, our team was able to work with KABC 7, and we have a new segment that features one of our newest board members. And so with that, we'd like to show that.
Well, the warm weather makes it easy to enjoy the outdoors, but of course, here in Southern California, you have to be wary of the air quality. Eyewitness News reporter Mark Cota-Robles has details on an app that can help you determine when it's okay to be outside.
These upcoming summer months are a popular time to be outdoors, though it's not necessarily the healthiest.
It all depends on the air quality.
Dr. Eli Hendel is a pulmonologist with Dignity Health Glendale Memorial Hospital. Although unpredictable, he says during the summer smog season, he often sees more patients.
There's more sun, there's more oxygen being electrified and producing ozone.
That's where the Air Quality Management District comes in. They have an app for that. It's already been available on Apple devices. Now they're launching an Android version, which will soon begin offering an hourly forecast 2 days out, with the ability to predict air quality levels for fine particulate matter and ozone.
Green is good, yellow is moderate. If you see anything in the red, that's when it's really unhealthy air.
The asthmatics are the ones who suffer the most because they have exaggerated reactions to the same elements that other people will. Right now, it seems like the air is nice and cool and clean, but it is not. The air quality index right now, while we speak, is 83, which is not good.
The AQMD thinks their app update is a great way for people who are heading out on a hike or planning other outdoor exercises to better plan their activities around the times of day when the air quality is predicted to be the cleanest. Dr. Hendel agrees.
Having an app that is readily available to everybody during the day will be very useful.
Reporting in Glendale, Mark Cota-Robles, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
So kudos to our team. Thanks to Nahal and everybody, and especially thank you, Senator Delgado, for being willing to do that. That concludes my comments, Dr. Burke.
Well, I have some unpleasant news to pass on to those who haven't heard yet. But Dr. Lerner, who was a member of our hearing board, passed last week, and memorial services are being set for him, so we'll let everybody know who would like to attend those. Okay, we have some presentations to make. I think I will. Are we going to do it down there, Paul? Quiet in here, isn't it? I'm going to do Joe first. Oh, God. So about 2 weeks ago, Derek Galatari calls me and says, do you want me to do some talking points for Dr. Lou's presentation? I said, well, among your staff, Derek, I'm not in great favor because they spend all this time writing these talking points, and then I never use them, so I know they're not real happy with me. But I saw Monica over here. Monica, the last thing you wrote for me, do you remember the grade I gave you? A minus. You better hold on to that because it may be a career high. Okay? Now, I got to tell you, in my 23 years at the marathon, I dealt with a lot of PR people. I've probably been involved in almost 100 campaigns. Monica Kim is the best writer I've ever seen, period, in the story. No one better. And she wasn't good enough to write talking points for you. Because what I wanted to say to you was about another Joe. Because in 1947, would anybody who was alive in 47 raise your hand? I got one. I got two because I know Larry raised his hand behind me and Clark raised his hand. 1947, my dad used to take me to a ball game. We were big Indians fans. Second baseman for the Cleveland Indians was a fellow by the name of Joe Gordon. Called him Flash. Won the Most Valuable Player award 3 years before he came to Cleveland. He used to play with the Yankees. He was a utility infielder par excellence. They talk about utility players today, they don't even know what they're talking about. Joe Gordon could hit, he could field, and there was one time when I was 8 years old, I actually saw him coaching the runner in front of him who was running the base paths. He was an all-time utility ball player. On this board, for the time you've been here, you've been an all-time player. Your professionalism is beyond question. Your interest in the public's interest has been paramount to none. You and I have had a few bumps in the road.
Early on, we had a couple.
Yes, yes. And you know, that correction of the grammar in the board letter, I could have did without that. But other than that, you met the test. And when you put your head down on your pillow at night, you can rest assured that you gave it your all. And probably the fact that you gave it your all was a factor in the fact that you didn't get reappointed. So those of us who know the insides of baseball, we know what's going on. But I personally want to thank you because you kept me on my toes, that's for sure. And I work real hard at it, so I know you were working real hard at it. And I think that my debt of gratitude towards you goes without saying. Thank you very much, Dr. Lou.
Thank you so much. So, reminds me of the time that you wanted to buy a baseball team around here somewhere.
Yeah, with the guy behind you.
Yeah, that guy. You guys were up to something on that.
Yeah.
And my kid was playing for the soccer team, remember that? And I made the flyer that said, soccer team for sale, and I was gonna sell it to you at a much lower price.
Probably something I could afford it.
You took that and you took it back to Yvonne. You had to show it to her. It is a lot of hard work. I mean, it really is. If you want to do this job right, you got to put a lot of work into it. You kind of forget that until I was told I wasn't going to get reappointed, and I started taking all those things off of my calendar and realizing I didn't have to read a 1,000-page, board package for that upcoming Friday. So in some sense, it's a relief not to have to do all that work. But you guys know, I mean, you put in a lot of work to make this happen, and so do a lot of other people here. I mean, I just want to thank the staff for everything they did during my tenure here. Unbelievable job, all of you. From the admin folks, especially the executive admin folks who helped me on a daily basis, it seemed like fantastic work. The law, the legal team, Bay, you weren't here the whole time. By the time you've been here, you've been absolutely fantastic. And Barbara, you're a resource this agency can't live without. Wayne and I go back way before he was hired here. And it was so good that we made a unanimous decision to hire you, Wayne. It brought the board together and the agency together in a time that was a little, upsetting. But I think that we've worked it out. And as I told you, that I think your management of this agency has been fantastic. Matt, you and your technical team, incredibly important. And everybody who comes to you with a handout, trying to get their hands on some of that money, you deal with that very professionally and very well. And they know that you make good decisions based off of a real thorough knowledge of the issue. So I really do appreciate it. And, through and through, planning and rules, and Dr. Fine, and just absolutely fantastic work. And you've got perhaps some of the hardest job that anyone does. And Jill, you're a bedrock of this organization. You keep it going, you keep it moving. Really do appreciate it. Communications folks, everybody who does everything in this agency, they do a fantastic job. I know it's hard work. And I was thinking about, we did this poll. No one knows who the hell we are, And we know we're dealing with really important issues here. So you guys might do it in a bit of obscurity, but you know how important it is, and I really do appreciate everything you guys do. It does take leadership to make this thing work. All of the board members are leaders in their own right. They do a fantastic job. We might not agree on everything, but it's always been professional, and it's always been rewarding to have the relationships with everybody who served on this board. We've lost some people. We just lost Dr. Lerner, but we lost Roy Wilson, and we lost Supervisor Benoit, and that was really tough. So we have to appreciate what we're given an opportunity to do here and the short time that we have to do it.
Right.
There's one last thing. I thought about if I had any regrets. Dr. Parker is the only person I've ever talked to about this. I do have one regret. As a board member, you can put any item you want on the agenda. You guys should remember that. The one item I wanted to put on the agenda, I never got a chance to. You guys might notice that this auditorium doesn't have a name. This should be the William A. Burke Auditorium.
Hey, man.
And I told Dr. Parker I wanted to make that motion a long time ago, but I never got around to doing it, so someone's going to have to pick it up for me and do that. This should be the William A. Burke Auditorium sooner rather than later. Thank you, Dr. Burke.
Oh, no, thank you. Very kind. so you know I saved the crack one for you. You know I've known you a long time before you came here. A long time, right? In fact, I was digging through my pictures the other day, and Paul, throw up that picture. See that guy on the left? That Suave Bowler guy? That was about 20 pounds ago, 2 suit sizes. Now, you know it was the cannon, by the way, is protecting his house.
Which one?
Now, you know this picture was taken a long time ago because you see the little kid on the right? That's a state assembly, current state assembly, rev and taxation chairman. Wow. So she was having big fun eating ice cream that day. And the 2 young ladies in the front, they were nothing but trouble. That's my oldest daughter, Christine, in the front. That's Alicia, who's Clark's daughter, and they were running buddies. And if you ever wanted to see some, they could get in more trouble in 5 minutes than the average kids could get in 5 days. So I've known you a long time. I've known you the whole time you were on this board. And God willing, I will know you until the big guy reaches down and calls me home. So I'm here to tell you that I know how hard you worked while you were on this board. Because I'm probably the only person outside of your wife who talks to you as much as any person. I know you put in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of man hours. And they were well done. And they were well thought out. And they were accurate. The people, the citizens of the South Coast Air Quality Management District owe you a thank you. The South Coast Air Quality Management District itself owes you a thank you. And I, as chairman, for the time that you were here, I definitely owe you a thank you. Because I know that you gave me 120% of your effort. So I give you this with mixed emotions. It's like Joe says, freeze up some of your time. I know you're not going to go to the racetrack with me anymore because you're going to go to work, but you should. I've been trying to convince you to take more time for yourself, but you don't because you're always thinking about other people. Probably known you 50 years now. Never in those 50 years have I ever known you to put yourself first. Never. You put me before you put yourself. You know, you're just a very unusual person. And I have been blessed to serve not only as your friend, but as your colleague on this board. And before I go modeling for another 15 minutes, I'd like to present this token to you on behalf of the South Coast Air Quality Management District. And I've asked Paul to put a 3-minute limit on your response.
After I take a minute and a half to get myself composed, I served on a lot of boards. Public corporations, coastal commissions, fiduciary committees, school boards. But I don't think I've ever served on a board that has been so gratifying as my service itself here at AQMD. One of the things that I have been so grateful for is that my colleagues, I won't call any names, but I received a personal handwritten letter from 3 of the people on this board, not on their official stationery from the entity that they represent, but for them personally, thanking me for my service here on this board. That has meant so much to me as an individual because someone else recognizes what it is that I've done. And you're right. When I first started on this board, every document that I was given, every board minute I read. Totally. Not having my staff to read it, but I read. Commented on it, asked questions about it. I think Matt got kind of probably a little tired of me calling him up and asking him questions about matters. He'd say, why are you getting involved in this? This is staff. He didn't say that, but that was a concern. I don't get involved in things that I don't know anything about. This whole process itself in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've had my accountants to go back, and I have counted up over the last 10 or 12 years, there's been $15.3 million cash dollars that I have given directly to organizations and to concerns itself that we have, that we are involved in. That's not because I want to basically stand here and tell you that today. That's because to tell you that that's what my concerns itself have been, in helping out and reaching out to help other people of those things that I wanted to. My resigning from this board itself was directly in relationship to my concern about how much I care about the people on this board, my colleagues, and for what I've done. I don't want anyone to have to basically bear what it is that I want to represent and to be a part of. I choose that on my own. I've done that for the 76 years itself that I've been here. Something that I will close by saying that my 3 minutes is almost up. I know that, but when I decided to do that, I decided that it was best for me and for the people and the things itself that I love is to basically carry that veil of what I have believed in all of my life. From the day itself that I was born, that Dr. Burke said, and one day in introducing me, he said, and I'm going to say something to you about Dr. Parker that many of you don't know, that he was an orphan. I never thought of myself as an orphan. My father died when I was 13 years old, and my mother died when I was 15. Well, the definition of an orphan is that if you leave without parents itself before they die before you're 16, you're an orphan. I never thought about that, but I was. Came to this city itself with $57 in my pocket. And I basically achieved beyond that of any expectations of any person in this particular auditorium or anywhere in this United States. That's for me. That's not for everybody else. It may have been only to whatever it is that I gained. But I came here, one of the things that I saw when I first came here was the air quality itself was so bad that days like this you couldn't see to the back of the auditorium as you walk down the streets itself in the early 1960 versus what it is today. And I was so honored to be there, serving on the coastal commissions, et cetera. People wanted to build big homes along the coast, et cetera. But people who wanted to just breathe clean air did not have that opportunity to do that. And then finally, in the 70s, these agencies themselves were created. And to serve and to be a part of that was something that was so gratifying. And to be a part of it with a person that I've known for so many years. He's not just a friend, he's a brother. That's Dr. Burke. He and I have an association that I could not even sit here and describe to you today. It goes beyond that. He will send me a text at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I will answer back to him, or whatever it may be, of something very innocuous. I won't tell you the latest one that he sent to me. But the one itself that was probably most important, that he sent to me one day, and he probably may have forgotten it. You mean so much to me that you're more than a brother. I want to thank you for whatever it is that we have had. Thank you very much. Thank you to my colleagues. God bless you. God bless this agency. May I say one last thing? I wanted to acknowledge my predecessor, my successor, not predecessor, but Senator Delgado. She and I today met for the first time, and she said to me, she says, I wanted to have an opportunity to meet you. I've heard so much about you. And I said, oh, I'm quite sure you're going to do a great, great job. She says, oh, I could never, ever fulfill your shoes. I've heard so many great things about you. I wish you all the success. God bless you, and thank you very much for your comments.
We move along to the consent calendars. Items 1 through 19. Mr. Etter would like to speak on 2A, B, C, 3, 4, 7, 9, 12, 14, 16, 17, and 18. Who else do we have on the consent? Okay, so, Mr. Etter, would you come to the microphone? Babe, would you explain this to us so we all will understand the rules of how much time Mr. Etter has for these items? Because he also wants to speak on board calendar items 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So Mr. Etter has 3 minutes for public testimony for the consent calendar items, items number 1 through 19, and for the board calendar, items 21 through 27. So he has a total of 3 minutes for items 1 through 27. And I would recommend that he make the comments for all of those items now.
Did you get that, Paul? Okay. Mr. Etter?
Hello, my name's Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition, and under protest of the restraints being put on me on not allowing public comment to the extent that it might be done and could be done and should be done. There's a lot of stuff in here about omitting programs from CEQA. I was at a meeting at UCLA yesterday on climate change and the law. One of the things they brought up there was housing and transportation tensions and problems. Things are different now, okay? Things are changing fast. We got resistance from the administration on climate change and denial, to the point that inaction by those who say they believe in it and want to do something about it, it's just totally inadequate. They said there's a 5% earmark for low income on all legislation coming through. I worked on the first low income 10% cut aside, OIA 42, PUC, financing the solar transition, tried to get it increased to 20, etc. That was about 40 years ago. The district's doing, I don't know what now, I've heard different things. I was at a committee meeting, and it's like a buying program to try to help low income and show emissions reduction. There's been all kinds of buying programs for a long time, but this was at a meeting of air districts in April, and a program in Iowa. I live in a farm in Iowa in 65. Anyway, time for action is now. Everything that's done is opposed unless it has, and we're submitting to the record and have a thumb drive now from 16 and 17 for the 16 plan, the Solar New Deal, that has over 50 exhibits and is in the record and was totally ignored. Also, the Federal Register is going to publish the plan, and it's in action. So there's many levels that this thing has to be challenged on and are in play. And I consider this all part of settlement negotiations from the fiasco that happened after the last plan, and total evasion and of anything that we submitted, including the low-income solar equity program. Anyway, thank you. Questions? Comments?
That concludes the testimony on the consent calendar. Oops, we have a number of members who would like to speak on it. We'll start with Mayor Mitchell.
For the record, agenda items numbers 4 and 5, I do not have a financial interest, but I'm required to identify for the record that I'm a board member of the California Air Resources Board. Oh, sorry. Shall we do that again? I don't have a financial interest, but on agenda items numbers 4 and 5, I'm required to identify for the record that I'm a member of the California Air Resources Board. Thanks.
Board Member Delgado?
Yes, I'm recusing myself from agenda item number 7 due to previous campaign contributions received from Cordova Corporation.
Supervisor Rutherford.
Wondered if we could pull item 7 off consent, please.
Board Member, Council Member Cacchiotti.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to pull items just for brief questions or comments, 8, 10, and 11.
Council Member Robinson.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I wanted to pull item 13.
Supervisor Bartlett.
Yes, I'll need to recuse myself from item number 11 because of a campaign contribution from West Coast Arborists within the last 12 months. Thank you.
Board Member Delgado again. You're off, and Supervisor Rutherford, did you want to speak again? No, I already. You're off. All right. Can we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move the remainder of the consent calendar that hasn't been pulled.
Second.
Do we have any opposition? Hearing none, the consent calendar is carried. items.
Item 13 was pulled.
Hmm?
Item 13 was pulled.
Item 13.
I think there were 7. Before that, there were several pulled.
Was that
7, 8, 10, 11.
Oh, I'm sorry, 7 and 11. Start with those.
7, 8, 10, 11.
Then you want to go 14 to 19?
Do you want to do the consent calendar items first?
Because 13 was included in your motion, I assume.
So which ones are pulled, Michael?
I pulled 8, 10, and 11. Janice pulled number 7. So, somebody pulled 13. Dwight, okay.
Yes, Mr. Chair, so I believe items 7, 8, 10, 11, and 13 were pulled.
So let's take item 7.
Why don't you take over? I'm having trouble here.
All right, we'll go ahead and get to item 7. So Janice, did you pull item 7?
I pulled 7.
I'm sorry.
Ben?
Michael, go ahead.
Just, I'm sorry. I didn't pull 7, sorry. I pulled 8.
7 was mine. I simply wanted to object to this item. I don't think that this is the type of contract that requires a sole source contract. That was concerning to me. I'd like to oppose it.
Okay. Any other comments on this item? Would someone like to make a motion? So
Move the item. I'll second.
take a vote. All right, we're going to open the roll.
Can you lock in your vote?
All right, that item passes 8-3 with 1 abstention.
Mr. Chair and Vice Chair, maybe in the future, she brings up a good point. Maybe we can just have more of a robust request for proposal set out or competition.
Did staff have any notes or reason why that was a single source, or?
Sure. Supervisor Rutherford, this item, the reason why we did a sole source was both these organizations or entities have had significant relationships in these disadvantaged communities, but more importantly, we needed to get this out there quickly. One of the things that we were constantly hearing in Sacramento was that when we were doing the rounds, and it's actually for the last few years, when we go up there and we talk about the need to meet attainment, they go, well, you know, this is the first we're hearing it. You know, you guys need to do a better job of educating not only us in Sacramento, but the local entities on the urgency to meet attainment, being that Cordova Corporation has done these for us in the past, what they call Air Quality Institute events. We decided they already had the expertise. We want to get out there sooner rather than later. And then also the Bakewell Company, they have deep relationships in the disadvantaged communities that they were going to be able to both help us out, reach out to elected officials and the decision makers in those communities to help us educate them on attainment issues.
I appreciate the explanation, of course, and I had gotten that background before the meeting. But with all due respect, there's nothing urgent about this. This is a reaction to people disliking our idea of a tax hike. We have been working on that for well over a year. The idea that these local firms are uniquely positioned to communicate with people in Sacramento when we already have how many lobbying firms on our payroll up there?
We have 3.
3 different lobbying firms, and now we need to sole source urgent 2 contracts for community engagement. I think we all know what this is. We all know why it's sole sourced, and that's why I voted no.
All right. Thank you, and sorry for we didn't get the dialogue before then. So the other items that were pulled, Mr. Michael?
8, 10, 11.
8, 10, 11, go ahead.
Just a few questions. 8 involves our child care facility over here to my right. And I'm just curious, what I read it, I support it. What percentage of the people that use it are employees? I usually go there in the mornings when I get here early, and I talked to a couple of parents, but I noticed when they drop their kids off, they all pull out. I'm hoping most of the people that use it are ours, but it looked like a lot of people actually using it coming from somewhere else.
There is 20 out of the 95 students who are in the child care center right now are AQMD related students. there's a minimum in the contract that requires the minimum amount of spots available for AQMD employees to be used, as well as a discount that goes to AQMD employees as part of the lease.
Is there more of a demand from AQMD employees to use it, or just only 20?
No, it seems to be those who are making a request, who are applying, are getting positions, and where there is a waiting list, AQMD employees get priority. Oh, yeah. Wayne also wanted me to mention that the demographics of our agency are changing. We are bringing in a lot of new employees, a lot of younger employees who are starting their families, and so the Child Care Center has been a very great benefit to them, and as it's been one of the things that have brought them to us, and one of the things that keeps them here. So it's been a great experience. We did a survey of the parents who are there now, and we got excellent responses from them in terms of the security that they feel, in terms of the education they feel that their children are getting. They feel that they're being listened to by the organization. So it's been a good experience.
That's consistent with the parents I talked to over the last couple of months. So thank you. I'd like to move this item.
Do you want to ask your questions on the other two items real quick, too?
Oh, yes.
Or if
So-
they're just questions,
okay,
go ahead
great.
and take them now.
So just on, I brought these up with Wayne, and he's always addressed concerns immediately. On our landscape maintenance services, there is one provision in there that talks about using clean equipment. There was one, they included a 4-stroke or a 2-stroke leaf blower. We have the technology now. We've been using electric leaf blowers now for a couple of years, and we've got 6 manufacturers that produce them. I think the 2-stroke, that has gas, and it's very, even though it's the cleanest gas model on the market, it pollutes significantly. I think that it should be, all equipment should be electrical they use. We use it at our park. We've used it at our park for 4 years. Our entire city uses electrical equipment now. There's no excuse for using any gas at our facility. So if you can take that part out of there. And secondly, if we can monitor this, I mean, it doesn't have to be all the time, but maybe a quarter, a couple of times, just to ensure that they're being honest and using the equipment. One example is at our council meeting the other night, I was in the bathroom, and the gentlemen were doing the janitorial service cleaning up, and I asked the guys, what's in there, that stuff you're using? It smells kind of funny. And again, they were young workers, probably just out of high school and didn't speak much English and had no idea. And, they're exposed to it. And I asked our staff, and they haven't checked in a year on the type of chemicals we're using, hopefully more vinegar than chemicals. So I just hope we just follow up and check on this all the time, because all of you are being exposed to this every day. I only come here a couple times a month, but I want to protect you and our neighbors too. And finally, on the tree trimming, when you go around a facility, and everybody should walk around a facility once in a while, it's really interesting. You don't realize how much foliage we have here and how many trees in our courtyards all around, small, medium, large size. But when we do sign up with the whether it was West Coast Arborist or Gothic or whoever it was that got, I think it was Gothic got the tree trimming, and Wayne's already addressed this, so I really thank Wayne for acting quick, always does. That when they'll park their large trucks there, and as they cut the trees, they trim them, and they go through the cutter, and they're usually these large diesel trucks. They're idling for hours, as you're going to be hopefully not inhaling that. But Wayne's already made the change, that all our equipment now, they'll be looking, using cleaner things. So just so everybody knows, in the future, when this comes back in a couple of years or something like that, always insist and make sure we're following up. We go out there and check what they're using all the time. Are they using electric leaf blowers, electric hedge trimmers, tree trimmers? Because we do have a lot of landscaping to maintain here. But I'll move these items, Mr. Chair.
All right, so that's moving items 8, 10, and 11, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, I have a motion and a second on that. Anyone opposed to those items? All right, we'll go ahead and move those items. On to item 13, Councilmember Robinson.
Yes, thank you very much. Dr. Burke, your comments to start off the meeting about the untimely and unfortunate passing of Dr. Lerner are something that's incredibly sad for definitely for his family, I think for the agency, because he'd so aptly served on our hearing board and done a great job. The medical member is an important component of that hearing board. And, I know that we had some challenges both in finding candidates to fill that position. I understand Dr. Lerner was even considering maybe not reapplying this year. And then we had a challenge finding an alternate. We do have an alternate who I believe, had expressed interest in being the full member. And I just want to make sure that the hearing board isn't crippled in any way in this particular instance. So I'm just kind of curious as to whether or not the way this item's written, if we could consider the alternate as the full member and then go out and look for another alternate as we move forward so that we don't cause any challenges for the hearing board where they just have 4 members showing up. So just ask staff first, is that something that we could do?
Yes, the short answer is yes. The person who's been recommended as the alternate could be considered for the full-time membership, and then the board could direct us to do a search for a alternate. Alternatively, the board could also choose to appoint him as the alternate and do a search for a full-time member.
Great. So, well, again, from my perspective, I think that we have a qualified individual who could fill that full-time role, and so that's a direction that I'd like to see us go. If this is appropriate time, I'd make a motion that we make Dr. Bernstein the full member and then go out and look for another alternate.
Very good. Second? That's the current alternate. That's the current alternate, and he was interested in being the full-time.
And I would second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Anyone opposed to that? Very good. So moved. All right, that brings us to the board calendar. Does anyone have anything they need to pull off the board calendar or questions, board comments? Items 21 through 26. There's 27 a part of that too? Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Vice Chair, we weren't clear as to whether or not items 8, 10, and 11 were voted on or approved.
Yeah, I asked if there was any opposed, and I got no response, so those items are moved.
We have a number of speakers requests on item 27, so you might want to handle that separately.
There are plenty of speakers on item 27. Okay, so I'll take just board items 21 through 26. Any questions on those? You got a motion on items 21 through 26?
Move those items.
Second.
Motion second. Any opposed? All right, that brings us to item number 27, staff presentation.
Vice Chair, this is Philip Fine. The presentation is very similar to what we provided in the update last month. We're happy to waive the presentation and then just address questions if that's the board's pleasure.
All right, all the board members okay with that?
Yes.
All right. We'll go ahead and take a public comment then. First up is Rebecca Sangroza, Leadership Council. And she'll be followed by Miguel Rivera at the other microphone, please. Miguel.
Hello, good morning, members of the board. My name is Rebecca Zaragoza. I am a senior policy advocate with the Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability. We are a social and environmental justice nonprofit organization based in the San Joaquin Valley and Eastern Coachella Valleys. Leadership Council submitted a comment letter regarding the reclassification request, detailing some of our concerns and asking for clarity on a few issues. I know staff have already provided responses to our comments, but I wanted to reiterate a few of them today. We understand the premise for the reclassification request, but feel that it is yet another reflection of South Coast AQMD's inability to reach attainment in the Coachella Valley for the 8-hour ozone standard. And it also reflects particular inaction of the to reach attainment in the Coachella Valley. We recognize that reducing emissions upwind in the South Coast Air Basin is an important strategy, but the district must also commit to implementing mitigation measures in the Coachella Valley to simultaneously help reduce local emissions and improve public health. There's a very limited amount of air monitors in the Coachella Valley that measure ozone. The district needs to implement an expanded regulatory system to identify the impact in areas that are not being thoroughly monitored, especially in the Eastern Coachella Valley. On top of that, the district needs to clearly identify the roles and regulations that will be made and included in the state improvement plan in order to reach attainment in the Coachella Valley by 2024. It is also important for staff to identify how they expect to respond to climate change threats and events in order to stay on track with their timeline for 2024. This process also requires the district to detail how it plans to increase collaboration with impacted communities, the US EPA, CARB, and tribal governments to ensure that communities and tribal members in the Coachella Valley are meaningfully engaged in the development of the SIP. In the responses we received with our comment letter at the consultation meeting and at the consultation meeting, it seems that the district is overly reliant on AB 617 implementation to solve all of these issues. AB 617 is definitely an opportunity and a tool that we should be working towards and striving for, which the community members and organizations in the Eastern Coachella Valley have been doing so for the past 2 years. But the responsibility still lies with the district regardless of AB 617 implementation. With that said, we ask that the district commit to enhancing its public participation process. Many residents that we work with in the Eastern Coachella Valley do not rely on email or newspapers to learn about community meetings or events. You can always engage with community organizations, but should not rely solely on them to do the outreach for you. Additionally, when topics like this arise, they should be discussed in the region itself to be more accessible to the public. And as always, Leadership Council is open and willing to collaborate and engage with South Coast AQMD to ensure that the needs of the Eastern Coachella Valley are met. And just really quickly, I want to take this opportunity to support our partners at CCAEJ and MyGen in their asks for the board to require industries to pay their fair share because they are polluting a lot of environmental justice communities in the Inland Empire, and these appropriate fees should be made and implemented and collected within 1 year. Thank you.
Thank you. And great job getting all that into 3 minutes. Miguel? And then can I have Abraham Gastelum come to the next microphone? Or Abram, sorry.
Good morning, my name is Miguel Rivera. I'm a resident of Muscoy and a committee member of the San Bernardino Muscoy AB 617 Steering Committee. I'm here today in solidarity with the community from the Coachella Valley on its ozone reclassification. It's important for the board to use this issue towards solutions for zero emissions instead of natural gas and diesel. This reclassification is at cost to the health of our communities. I know this because we suffer from extreme ozone in San Bernardino. We share the same air in the inland region, and we have seen an increase of air pollution near our homes and schools that are permitted, even though they may increase cancer risk, as noted by the Air District in many environmental impact reviews. Again, we must consider the cost of our health besides development and industry to keep costs low and promote economic vitality. We should plan for our future towards zero emissions for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, my name is Abram, and I live in Riverside. I've come here today to speak about the reclassification of the Coachella Valley's ozone air quality and the importance of moving towards solutions aimed at zero emissions, working with community leaders, organizations, and industries for a more breathable future. In the basin, we all breathe the same air, and in the inland region, the air is horrible due to the ever-increasing air degradation from an increase in traffic, truck traffic, dirty railroads, and a growth of industry dependent on fossil fuels. This places all of our lives at risk with every breath, every day, and the health effects of ozone pollution leaves nobody out of the realm of harm. The ground level ozone in the Coachella Valley are not only impacted by the South Coast Air Basin, but additionally by significant hazardous emissions from factories, power plants, and other facilities that are permitted through current regulations to assault its own workforce and community with corrosive air. With this request to reclassify the Coachella Valley's attainment standard to extreme, let's begin to ensure that we take informed measures to devise infrastructures placing zero emissions solutions as an absolute if we want to live in a reality where to take a deep breath of relief, we can actually breathe easy. I'm here to say that this is not a cost for industry and development, but on our health. Rulemaking like the indirect sources rule is the action our communities in the valley need. We can thrive with good jobs and a better future towards investments for zero emissions and not depending on gas and diesel. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you have Yassi, please come up, and then to the other microphone, Carlo de la Cruz.
Good morning. My name is Yassi, and just like my colleagues from the Inland Empire, I came a long way to be here this morning. We are in solidarity with our brothers and sisters from the Coachella Valley because we feel like it's important to draw a connection between our regions and our communities. And that's why we hope that this reclassification can urge you all and the staff as well to look towards solutions. I know there's been a lot of worry and fear that this reclassification is going to burden development or jobs and the identity in the region, because we know our folks out in the valley need infrastructure and we need resources together. But we urge that we look this as an idea to work with us on the ground. We have ambitious folks that are looking towards changing up the identity towards zero emissions infrastructure investment, community-based solutions, and community science. Together, I think we can work on solving this issue and drawing a regional-wide solution like a just and equitable indirect sources rule. So that's not gonna be like the end-all, be-all solution, but we hope we can find something fair for our communities to be able to thrive and breathe. And many of our folks couldn't be here today because of the circumstances, whether it's health or school. There's a lot of finals going on, but our students are really passionate in wanting to see these issues occur. So thank you so much for your time, and we hope to see some solutions out of this situation.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Carlo is letting me use his time since I got here a little late. Is that okay?
What's that?
Carlo's going to be letting me use his time, so I'm not
And
Carlo.
what's your name for the record?
Andrea Vidaurre.
Have you, okay.
Thank you. So hi, my name is Andrea Vidaurre. I'm with the Center for Community Action and Environmental Justice, here standing in solidarity with the communities of the Coachella Valley and east of the Inland Empire. Our communities are not siloed, we're all dependent on each other. We know that anything happening in the coast is blowing over and affecting us, and then everything in the Inland Valley gets stacked up and blows over east. To redesignate and give everyone more time to clean up, their act is unacceptable to us. As we give everyone more time to figure it out, my community is getting more million-square-foot warehouses approved every corner, and thousands of diesel trucks added running through the basin, adding to the cumulative impact of the ECV. As we wait longer and longer to actually make plans and move forward, you've made the job harder and generations of families sicker. We all have deadlines to meet. Some of our deadlines show how good we're doing our job, and then some of our deadlines mean how much longer we're gonna be able to live safely in our environment. So as you extend your time to figure out attainment, know you have told generations of families that they'll have to breathe in increased pollution for 5 more years. We don't have any more of that time. You've got communities across the basin telling you what solutions really mean, telling you to hold these industries accountable for their mess, and they've been telling you for decades. If having to give extensions for meeting our benchmarks is not a sign for us to get serious on mandatory measures, then I don't know what is. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our public comment for this item. Do you have any board member comments, questions? Supervisor Perez?
Sure, I'd just like to ask staff, is there any thoughts on their behalf regarding the letter that was submitted by folks back home in the Coachella Valley, as well as maybe your thoughts on some of the points that were made?
I think the most important point or response is that what this action does is kicks off a 12-month process to update the plan for Coachella Valley to address that ozone concern that's the subject of this, but that will also be an opportunity to engage the communities out there to address the other air quality concerns that they have that may not necessarily be related to the upwind problems in the basin that are causing the ozone problem. So this action necessarily and requires us to kick off that process and do that update and engage that community, and we look forward to doing that with the folks that testified.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Quite frankly, I also appreciate the fact that your team, Wayne, and obviously staff, went out there to the Coachella Valley. As a matter of fact, our chairman, Benoit, I guess he's chairing now, was there with me as well. and not only had this conversation in Palm Desert, but also had it in Coachella, right? Which, quite frankly, many times it's the east side that's impacted, but yet it's not invited or not at the table. And I wasn't able to go to the gathering in Coachella, but I was able to go to the gathering in Palm Desert. And quite frankly, that's just the beginning, in my opinion. Ladies and gentlemen from the Coachella Valley and those that are in solidarity with the Coachella Valley, I think it's important that we continue to go back to the valley to have these type of discussions. Now, with that said, and this will kick off those discussions, I think that we need to make sure that the points that were made would be addressed. For example, the concerns of non-attainment, the mitigation measures in the Coachella Valley, perhaps the need for more air monitors, or perhaps making sure that we have that data readily available if we actually have them already. I know we have a few out there, but perhaps we just got to make sure that we get that information out to the folks. You know, they want clarity on how we're going to ensure that we meet the standards by 2024. I think we need to have a clear plan of action moving forward. Engagement of the Coachella Valley in the SIP was something that was brought up, which I think makes great sense. The issue of accountability, right? AB 617 is just one tool. We have to utilize that tool, but at the same time, how we're going to be holding accountable folks outside of the region of the Coachella Valley. The concern of accessibility to the public. That's why I mentioned it's important that we continuously go back to the valley. And there's many other points that were made up right here, but I just want to make sure that we're also clear that this is about balance, right? And quite frankly, we also have to not only consider and think about air pollution and environmental justice, but I'm also thinking about economic justice, right? Social justice. And we also got to think about the high poverty rates that exist in that region. And we also have to think about the Salton Sea, right? And many other points of view. And so what I mean by balance is we need to not only have the grassroots organizations at the table, but we definitely do also need to have the business industry. We have to think about economic growth and jobs as well. And so for me, it's important that everyone's at the table, that can be at the table, to have these discussions, because it's important to all of us. So with that said, I just want to say thank you to staff and the folks that drove out here from Coachella. Thank you for coming out here.
Very good. Any other board member comments or questions? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any opposed to the reclassification? All right, so moved. On to item number 28. This is to determine that the proposed amendment to Rule 301, permanent association fees.
Bring up the presentation, please. Good morning, everyone. Philip Fine, Deputy Executive Officer, Planning and Rules Division here at AQMD. This is an item that was a part of the item that was continued from last month. If you remember, last month the budget was adopted and several amendments to our fee rules were adopted, but the part about the restructuring of the toxic emissions fee was continued to this meeting. I have a presentation here. A lot of it is very similar to what everyone saw last month, so I'm just going to highlight a few slides and go through the rest very quickly. Just as a reminder, the board actions, we did adopt the budget, we did approve most of the Reg 3 fees and approved Rule 209, and again, we continued this portion. There was a motion made to give the board the option for a 2-year phase-in, which would essentially be about 50% in year 1 and 50% in year 2, versus what staff's proposal was for a 3-year phase-in, which was the first 50% would come in year 2 and the second 50% would come in year 3. So we're providing those options today. I also want to remind the board that 3 resolutions were actually adopted last meeting in association with this, all of which are triggered by the potential adoption of the fee restructuring. One on reporting back to the board on the revenue and costs of these programs and how those are balancing to see if changes need to be made. A second one to look at our source test approval process and review process, and internal work has already been begun on that with a report back. And the third item was to look at the emission factors that are used for toxics reporting and update those where we can, and perhaps do some work to facilitate that. So I won't go through a lot of the background. This is very similar to what was presented in the last meeting. So these slides are here for the record. We talked about the 4.5 million eventual increase in revenue. We talked about the district workload that these fees are eligible to cover. So there's a couple of new slides here. This is a little complicated, but it's a cumulative chart of how many facilities are, what the impacts are going to be. So the way to read this essentially is there's 40% of the facilities will have essentially no fee impact. Maybe 90%, 80% of the facilities or less will have maybe $2,000 or less fee impact. And then there will be some large impacts, but it's a small number of facilities that will see a large impact. And we have broken it down again, like we did in the last board meeting, in terms of manufacturing, utilities, refineries, and small business. The 90th percentile, so the 90th highest facility of the fee increases you can see here on the right of that. That was something the board had asked in the last meeting. So the timing considerations, this was the subject of the motion that was made. One timing consideration is, as you know, the California Air Resources Board is considering is actually amending a rule or actually creating a rule that's going to require statewide facilities in our area and other areas to report criteria emissions and toxics emissions. Obviously, we already have some of those programs, but this statewide rule could require more facilities to report to us than currently do. The proposal before you does not require any additional facilities to report, but this potentially could in the future. But it's not going to be phased in for several years, and the early years will essentially be the same facilities that report now. So we will have time to see if there's any unintended consequences of this fee restructuring. And we don't even know what that final regulation is going to look like yet. But the early reporting in the first few years of that program, in terms of what CARB is working on right now, is not going to be that different than what is reporting now. And then there were the motion to look at a 2-year phase-in versus a 3-year phase-in. Obviously, a 2-year phase-in, it's a faster fee increase. There will be more revenue and sooner revenue to the district to support our toxics work. But the reason staff had recommended 3 years last board meeting was we know that some of the toxics emissions need another look for accuracy, and because of the potential fee impacts, we know that facilities will be doing that. So we wanted to provide a little more time to do additional testing, additional auditing, to make sure that these emission factors are accurate. So that was the reason behind the first year having no fee increase, but having the structure in place so people can do those calculations and see what needs to be done. I will mention that legally, under state law, we have to phase this in over a minimum of 2 years. So we have got stakeholder feedback, and a lot of these have been addressed. We had the comments on the source test review and approval, and I mentioned the resolution and the work that's going on in that area. And we had some concerns over the criteria and toxics reporting regulation and the new facilities that may be coming in. We've had some good meetings on that. There's 26,000 permitted facilities, many of which may have to report some data to us, but only the ones that have to report emissions to us would come in under these fees. So where California Air Resources Board is going, that many facilities that might just have one backup diesel generator or a gas station won't be reporting emissions to us. They will be reporting maybe throughput, hours of testing, or things like that. So that would not trigger this potential Rule 301. So they would have another way of reporting. So this would not impact them even in the future. There may be other fees that we have to come up with for that, but it would not be part of this rule. And again, the early years, it's not the universe of facilities reporting is not that different. Again, and then the justification. We've heard the discussions about the justification. So we know that this proposed fee increase do not recover the full costs of our toxics program, but that doesn't mean we don't have other revenue sources that do cover this. We have, sometimes we could use penalty fees. Sometimes we have been getting one-time funding for AB 617 activities from the legislature. Those aren't as secure as a fee increase, but we continue to receive those. That's one of the reasons we want to come back and report after this fee increase is implemented to see if any adjustments were made, need to be made. So again, recommended actions is, again, determine that this is exempt from CEQA, and then for the board to decide on one of two options, the 2-year phase-in of the fee increase, which would be about 50% in year 1 and 50% in year 2, or the 3-year phase-in, which would have a 1-year lag, followed by a 50% increase, and then a 50% increase in the 3rd year. Happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Any board member questions before I take public comment?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Dr. Fine, 2-year, 3-year phase-in. When is the effective date when you'd start the clock ticking? Is that July, or is it, I saw something here, January 1st. When is the effective date?
So the fees are, so the first part of the year, January through March or so, is when facilities report their emissions.
Okay.
And we take all that information and then calculate the fees. So the fees are due in the mid-year timeframe. So on a 2-year phase-in, it would be next year, 2020, where the fees would be due for emissions that were emitted in this year, 2019. Under a 3-year phase-in, it would be 2020 emissions with the fees due in 2021.
Okay, thanks.
All right, with that, we'll go ahead and take public comment. I have 19 speakers on this item. First speaker, Francis Keller from SEEB, and after that, we'll have Harvey Etter. Keeler.
All right. Excuse me. Good morning, Chairman Burke and members of the Governing Board. I'm Frances Keeler, the Vice President of SEEB. We're here today to address this toxics fee that is being proposed. We appreciate the board's recognition last month of to give us more time, the 30-day delay. That's been helpful for us understanding some of the major issues that affect the fee, including this CARB's proposed CTR regulation that could have a dual impact on facilities, and we appreciate staff's time in helping us work through those issues. We also appreciate the board's recognition of the importance of source testing and accurate source testing, and the delay right now that we have in getting source tests reviewed and approved. This is going to be key in determining the accuracy or the amount of actual emissions and the source of these emissions that would be subject to the fee. We believe that right now we don't have an accurate handle on what those emissions are, and therefore, as we're reporting in 2019 emissions, we believe that we need that extra time to implement the fee in 2021 to assess those emissions accurately, do the source testing that is necessary, get them approved so that we have accurate emissions reported in 2020. Thank you.
Thank you. Harvey Etter to the microphone, and then Bill Lamar to the next microphone.
Hello, good morning. I'm Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition. Toxics. We just heard about Coachella. We heard about warehouses and diesel and gas trucks. The state has never studied natural gas as toxics, all right? Big problem. Benzene. I'd like to know right now, what is the benzene numbers that you're expecting out of these ports for the natural gas and going to the warehouses all over the place that's giving people cancer and making them sick with asthma and whatnot? We've put in a proposal, got it in Carl Moyer's, an option to go for solar electric Class 8 trucks. Are open to talking to all manufacturers, started this a few years ago, and have got numbers, like BYD told me they can manufacture 5,000 Class 8 trucks a year. We can do solar electric trucks. We can increase that. We got other players. We need to do this now. They can be owned by the local communities through co-ops and whatnot, as we outlined in the low-income solar equity program and tied to housing and transportation. This there's a body count here. I heard numbers on benzene like something like 400 per million. From the ports and facilities they're going to, you got to test, you got to know these numbers. You went to DC, you went and changed these rules. They're not going to work. You're not going to meet a couple 100 tons a day by 23, 24 with this natural gas and stuff. You got to go for solar electric. You got to do it now. It's part of the Solar New Deal. It's part of what we're trying to work out with you folks, but we continue to see, you're not meeting the mark, not even talking about it. And, there's body counts. If you know about it, comes year after year. That's maybe murder one, at least manslaughter. Decision makers are responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill Lamar. Go ahead, and Anna Aldaco, please come to the other microphone. Bill?
Hi, good morning, Dr. Burke and board members. I'm Bill Lamar, Executive Director of the California Small Business Alliance, and I'm also a member of the Budget Advisory Committee. While we support and appreciate the district's efforts to control costs and improve operational efficiency, we find it difficult to support this fee increase based on the information provided. Staff claims that their workload involving toxics has substantially increased in recent years, and the revenue received isn't commensurate with the effort expended. My personal recollection of the recent budget cycles is that staff never made this an issue in our meetings. Emission revenues have declined for years because your rules are working and businesses are following the rules. In fact, the last several MATE studies have shown that toxic emissions from stationary sources have declined, yet business operating costs continue to rise. Unlike the backlog of 7,000 unprocessed permit applications in 2016, where a plan was approved to eliminate it in 2 years with a budget of $12 million without increasing fees, we know very little, if anything, about the size of this workload to approve and assess source tests and evaluate the toxicity of certain compounds for public health impacts. Before raising fees, we should have answers to questions like, is there a backlog? What's the size of the backlog? Is there adequate lab staff to handle the workload? If not, why not? How long has this condition existed? How many staff, how many hours, how much money will it take to reduce or eliminate this workload disparity, other than the $20 million that staff says that they need? Once staff gives us these badly needed details about the scope of the job, rather than phrases like increased workload or we're not covering our costs, we should all be in a better place to gauge if higher fees are indeed justified. I think I speak for the rest of the business community in saying that we would all welcome the opportunity to work with staff in this regard, but it'll take time, as it should, and that's why we recommend a 3-year option. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura Cortez to the vacant microphone. Anna?
Good morning. My name is Anna Adaco. I am from the city of Bell, and I am a member of East York Communities for Environmental Justice. When I was younger, I lived in a disadvantaged community. I never knew why I could hardly see the sky at night. I never knew what kind of air quality I was breathing in, why I smelled weird things in the air, and I never knew why the horizon was mostly brown. Moving away for college, being in a 93% white community, I was exposed to better air quality, clear skies during the day and night without having a brown sky horizon. In fact, this was so uncommon to me, it made my allergies so much worse because I was never exposed to such luxury. And it made my perspective of where I lived completely change. Growing up, I thought living under these conditions was normal, to breathe this kind of air, to have industries polluting so close to where I live, and how mostly everyone around me had asthma or some sort of health problem. I have breathing problems. Sometimes it really feels like I cannot breathe, and sometimes my pain in my chest gets so bad that I feel like someone is stabbing me. And I have been driven to the hospital countless of times due to my lack of breathing. Imagine being a child, going through your teenage years to your adulthood, thinking that having breathing problems, going to the hospital at such a young age, being exposed to these living conditions, be normal to you. While to white privileged community, these conditions are so uncommon and to live in, and something would have been done about this years ago. We need to hold these industries accountable for polluting our air, for poisoning us, and if this is going on in their communities, they would understand where we're coming from and why we stand before you today, but they just don't. They don't know, they don't have a clue of what it's like to be taken advantage of, to live in unhealthy conditions, where sometimes I would have to check the weather on my phone and have it say unhealthy air quality in sensitive group areas. Yet these industries want to lower costs to further poison us and to have us deal with it like if healthcare is free, and have us deal with it like where they're the ones paying for the hospital visits. But they're the ones doing it to our communities. Does that even make any sense? We're here to ask the governing board to protect us as human beings because we have human rights, to protect us from causing more pollution into our communities at a low cost. We want governing boards to protect us, our health, and our environment because we want to have a long lifespan without dealing with so much health issues due to pollutions from these industries. If you, the governing board, have our backs and hold these industries accountable with the fees increase as fast as possible, you will have our support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Would Francisca Castro come to the vacant microphone? Laura?
Good morning. My name is Laura Cortez. I am a resident of the city of Bell Gardens, and I am a member and organizer with East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice. As a child of color, going to school up against the 710 freeway, living within 500 feet of a railway, and right in front of a major roadway that caused significant traffic. Myself and my family couldn't identify or articulate that we were impacted by pollution, let alone that we were disproportionately impacted, as Anna mentioned earlier. As an adult woman of color, I'm here to ask for justice for my neighborhood because we deserve it. Justice, in this case, means that polluters pay. It means that my health isn't sacrificed for the benefit of a company, right? When they have a ton of company and I don't have the ability to receive that health care, right? Health care, right, that I will be exposed to and that I will have to suffer for and that I will have to go to the hospital for decades, right? And that if I choose to have children someday, my children will be impacted by that. And so AQMD's job is to regulate. We definitely encourage to implement the fee increase and collecting this funding as fast as possible, right? I heard a comment earlier that said that we should assess if the fees are indeed justified. I'm here to say that these fees are indeed justified, and I know that because I see that pollution. So I definitely encourage that, and I ask that we implement these fees because this is the only way that industries will be inclined to comply with the air regulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Whitney Amia to the vacant microphone. Ms. Castro?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Francisca Castro. I am from Boyle Heights, and I am also a member of East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice. Boyle Heights is home, but it is far from perfect. Not only are we surrounded by industrial and commercial cities, but we are enclosed by practically every freeway in LA. Now, when I was younger, I thought all of this was normal. The thousands of vehicles that go through Boyle Heights, which can you imagine how many cars, but most importantly, how many large commercial trucks go through my home, especially during LA rush hour? I thought it was normal to see clouds of what I know now to be chemicals being emitted by these factories surrounding my neighborhood. Then I realized this was far from normal. It is not normal for people in my community, in my family, to have asthma and to be at a higher risk of developing health problems because of the pollution. My friends and family have been rushed to the hospital because they cannot breathe. I find it hard to breathe, and I don't even have asthma, which I'm very thankful, and in the conditions we're in, I'm very lucky not to have asthma. This is unfair. It is unfair. The disproportionate burden that we carry is unfair. People in my community and those communities like mine should not be at a higher risk of developing health issues like asthma just because the polluters care more about their money than they do about the lives of the people that live around them. It is the absolute bare minimum to increase fees as fast as possible for the industries that are poisoning our air. Governing board, have the courage to stand up to the polluters, charge them, and protect us from the toxic pollution that these industries have no problem releasing into our air. I don't want to breathe in lead. I don't want to breathe in benzene. I want to breathe in clean air now, as soon as possible. We don't have no time. I've been breathing in this air. I'm tired of it. We need it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Carla De La Cruz to the vacant microphone. Ms. Amaya?
Yes, hello. My name is Whitney Amaya, and I'm a resident of West Long Beach and a member of East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice. Over the last few months, my community has been exposed to an increase in harmful emissions than what we're normally exposed to from 2 refinery fires at Phillips 66 and the explosion that happened earlier this week at Kinder Morgan. For those who aren't familiar with the communities surrounding these polluting facilities, our communities are predominantly low-income communities of color, and we are disproportionately suffering from the toxic emissions of these facilities. As the fees stand now, industry doesn't care to pollute. They'd rather pay those fines than decrease their emissions. So because of that, they're compromising the health of my family, my friends, and my community. And as it was mentioned previously by Laura, by Ana, and by Francisca, we can't afford healthcare. For us, going to the hospital isn't affordable. So I ask that the governing board support the increase in fees and that this increase and the collection of those fees happen as soon as possible. We can't wait 3 years. 3 years is too long. Thank you.
Thank you. Adrian Martinez, come to the vacant microphone, please.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Carlo De La Cruz, and I'm with the Sierra Club.
Carlo, you changed your hair color on us.
Not quite.
Someone else spoke for you earlier.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Andrea did speak for, I ceded my time to Andrea, and I'm happy to share. But today I'm speaking for the Sierra Club, and I just want to reiterate what I spoke last month, which is that we support the work of the toxics divisions of the South Coast AQMD. We believe the work is critical to preserving our clean air, and that really the fee that the Air District is asking for is really only a drop in the bucket. Since last month, we've had an election at the LAUSD. Many of you may know that Measure EE recently failed, and I just want to point to this because that election cost the district $12 million. And it is not always guaranteed that when you go to the ballot that you can expect the voters to be able to understand and be able to approve these tax measures, especially with all the other economic situations that are pressuring families, including housing, the lack of wage increase. And so I want to reemphasize that this fee that you're asking for from polluters, from businesses, from the sources themselves, is one of the most efficient and direct ways that not only can you raise money to provide the support for this important work, but also put a specific price tag on pollution and on polluting our air. Currently, it is way too cheap and it is too expensive to have asthma and to have those health costs on your own. So I just want to reemphasize, before you ask 14 or 18 million residents of the South Coast Air Basin to pay an increase in a potential sales tax either next year or the year after, let's ask those businesses to pay their fair share first. Thank you.
Thank you. Yasi, you can come to the vacant microphone. Adrian Martinez.
Good morning, members of the board. Thank you for discussing this issue today. I'm here to support moving forward as quickly as feasible with the fee increase. We think the 2-year phase-in is better than the 3-year phase-in, and we think that for a couple of reasons. First, and most importantly, this fee will send a strong signal that the more you emit the most toxic pollutants, the more you're going to pay. Those are the types of structures we need to put in place to make sure that if people or companies are emitting toxics like lead and benzene, they are encouraged to reduce that pollution. The second point I want to make is this work is really hard. We saw with Exide, the facilities in Paramount, and numerous other facilities throughout the region. It's not all the companies that are violating the law and unduly impacting communities, but certain ones are posing immense problems for communities. We need to make sure that the Air District staff has sufficient resources to hire lab technicians, lawyers, and other entities that are necessary to protect human health. We saw with the Exide disaster that it was an immense impact to people, and that's something where you want our agencies to have as many resources as necessary to prevent those and not allow those types of situations to continue and persist. And finally, I think this discussion and the additional research has posed the question about who should pay for these pollution programs. And it's our position that the industry should pay. Obviously, those who are law-abiding and reducing their emissions will pay less, and we think that's the best structure that could be put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Chavez to the vacant microphone. Yasi?
Good morning again. This is Yasi, and as you can tell, I'm passionate for clean air, and that's why I think this fee increase is vital, and it needs to happen faster. Again, coming from the Inland Valley, we have been traditionally home to industries that are having some of the heaviest polluters in the region as well. Steel mills, cement plants, waste incinerators, various locomotive shops, power plants, you name it, chances are we got it in the IE. And today's proposed fee increase is not going to be a bad piece of the puzzle for businesses or cost, because it can mitigate the severity of pollution. It cuts to the source of pollution we experience day to day, and industries having to pollute over the years must pay their fair share. We can simply not afford it. I'm sick and tired of hearing youth that I work with having to go to hospital visits on an emergency basis and being tacked with medical bills that stack up on and on. It's hard for me to work with folks and get them to come out here and advocate when they have to make up all the school days they've missed because they're chronically facing like seasonal allergies that are not seasonal, they're due because of the air quality. And so it's like I can go on and on with all the cases that we hear about, and it's not fair because they're not here to speak for themselves. So I think the revenue from this fee can provide a vital future towards research and development to solve our air pollution crisis. Increasing the fee and implementing within a year is the least that can be done. Or I guess 2 years now, but a year, hopefully, if it's feasible. We can't afford more runners' asthma, collapsed lungs, health issues, school days missed, emergency room visits. It's urgent that we focus on implementing a fee sooner rather than later. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Catherine Hoff to the vacant microphone. Christopher Chavez?
Yes, hi. My name is Chris Chavez. I am the Deputy Policy Director for the Coalition for Clean Air. I am also a member of the AB 617 Steering Committee for Wilmington, West Long Beach, and Carson. And I am here to speak in support of accruing these fees as quickly as possible and to oppose a 3-year implementation or phase-in or delay. The costs of polluting should not be placed on the community and your constituents. AQMD spent nearly $20 million on stationary source programs, but only collected $500,000. Using other sources of funding, other pots of funding like AB 617 funding is not appropriate. That money is specifically for emission reduction plans and improving the lives and empowering the community members benefiting from that program. And as mentioned by the staff, that program is also subject to annual appropriations, making sure that that funding is always going to be in a state of flux. Even under this increase, industry will only pay 25% of the cost to regulate them. Again, even under this increased fees, the community is still paying through indirect costs, through their health, through their quality of life, and so on. Given this, these fees need to be implemented as soon as possible. Giving polluters the opportunity to pollute on the cheap at the expense of low-income communities and communities of colors is not acceptable. And this issue is also important to me personally because my grandmother, who lived in Wilmington, died of cancer. My father, who grew up in Wilmington, had cancer. Fortunately, he survived and is still with us. Growing up in West Long Beach, both me and my cousin had asthma. So I'm not only here as a policy advocate, but I'm here as somebody who also has suffered at the hand of pollution as well. So I urge you to implement this fee as soon as possible. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Andrea Valdir? Sorry, got that wrong. Go ahead and come to the vacant microphone. Ms. Hoff?
Good morning. My name is Catherine Hoff. I am a staff attorney with Communities for a Better Environment, which represents environmental justice communities in Southeast LA and the Harbor area. You'll hear from some of our members shortly. I'm here today to support an increase in fees as soon as possible. It's only fair, as been noted, that companies who are polluting and causing health impacts on communities pay for those impacts, that communities bear the full cost of doing business. As has been noted, AQMD should not steal funds from other sources, such as AB 617. Those funds are already needed for those programs, and these funds should instead come from industry itself. It's far too cheap for these companies to pump hexchromium, benzene, and lead into the air. The board has an environmental justice program, but this is where the rubber meets the road. The board needs to be serious about environmental justice, increase the fees on industry, and do it as soon as possible without a grace period. A 3-year delay means that communities will get sicker, continue to breathe bad air, and suffer the consequences. Please increase the fees as soon as possible to the maximum extent possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Elisa Rivera, come to the vacant microphone.
Hello, my name is Andrea Vidaurre. I'm with the Center for Community Action and Environmental Justice from the San Bernardino and Riverside counties. I'm also speaking on behalf of my AB 617 steering committee in San Bernardino and Muscoy. We're here in support of the proposal on the table to have toxic fees phased in as soon as possible. What is being asked of this fee is incomparable to what communities across the basin every day are paying for with their lives. You don't know cost until you're paying for medical bills and medicine to keep family members alive. And worse if you're paying for it with a job that doesn't pay a living wage, which are more than half of all jobs in the Inland Empire. Fortunately, our elected officials haven't realized that the low-wage temp agency unsafe jobs that aren't providing health care that they're approving aren't benefiting us. Our communities need this type of structure for pollution accountability. We need these fees coming into our communities being used to mitigate and reduce exposure, not taking away funds from us. This is the bare minimum because the frontline communities can't continue to be asked to pay for it with our lives. No grace period is deserved, no amnesty is deserved. Responsibility and accountability is what we're asking for. And this is a modest proposal, is only a small way of getting there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Alicia Rivera. I am an organizer in Wilmington with Communities for a Better Environment, where people are really suffering because of all the pollution that they are breathing. And of course, we have an office in Southeast LA, in Huntington Park, where people are living with lead and other pollution, such as chromium from stationary sources. And so I see people suffering from cancer every day who had to reduce the amount of medication they take because they can't afford it. I know a young woman who's not 40 years old. She has 2 kids. She's supposed to take 3 pills a day to treat her tumors in the head, and she only takes 1 because it costs her $100 to get a pound of 30 capsules. And that's what I see. I see what the effects of the pollution on the low-income people. And I see parents who tell me that they have to rush the kids to the hospital, but the ambulance costs a lot of money for them, but they wait until the child turns blue after they have tried everything on their own that they have been taught to do to try to treat the asthma on their own. And it hurts me. And when we find out the little money that they pay per pound of lead, I mean, tell me, would you be able to pay $2.20 for a pound of lead? I would. And for 20 pounds of lead at $2.20 pound, I'd be able to afford it. But the impact of those many pounds on the people that have to live with it, the children that are playing on that dirt with lead unknowingly in schools like it has happened, and then there's never enough money for the cleanup. The cleanup are always delayed, like for excise, because there is not enough funding. Who put all that pollution there? The polluters. Please, it's only fair, when we find out that the refineries in Wilmington underreported for benzene emissions up to 34%. We thought we were breathing and being affected by benzene at a lesser rate. They were underreporting. It's fair that they pay a little more. Nothing of what you can charge with this increase will pay for what's already in the air, for the climate change we're having. The polluters have caused all this. It goes for our children or grandchildren. It's only fair that you increase that rate immediately, and it should be done within a year, really. So stand up, AQMD board, because we support you, and it's the right thing to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Flor, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Flor Barragan, CB member from Wilmington, California. I came to support an increase in fees for polluters. This is time they pay more for pollution, our environment, our soil and water, and our health. It needs to start in 1 year at most, be strong and adopt this increase today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Paul, the speaker, go ahead and do 6 minutes. Yep.
Buenos días, mi nombre es María de Reza. Venimos de Wilmington para apoyar que aumenten no puedo leer. Las cuotas a los contaminadores.
My name is Maria Reza. I came from Wilmington to support the fee increases for polluters.
Aquí. Sí. Los pagos no son suficientes, que los contaminadores aumentan a nuestra salud.
No one pays us for the effects of contamination on our health.
Aún el aumento no será suficiente para apoyar, para pagar por los contaminantes a nuestra salud, para supervisar a los contaminadores.
Even so, the fee increases are not sufficient to pay for the necessary costs to regulate the polluters.
Empiecen ahora, por favor.
Start now, please.
Gracias. All right, board member comments. I have Supervisor Hahn in the queue. That brings us into the public testimony.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all those who have come down to testify before this board today. It really does matter. It does to me anyway, to see those of you who have traveled all the way out here to express your concerns and feelings about this issue. And this is the governing body that is accountable to you. You know, we are the governing body that is responsible for the air quality. That's what we're called, the Air Quality Management District. Many of us serve on other bodies. I'm a county supervisor. Joe's a city council member. But this is the governing body that is going to be held accountable for how we deal with these issues. So we have two things before us today. One is whether or not we increase these fees. And the second item is how quickly we begin collecting these fees. I will tell you right now that I am voting, number one, to definitely increase the fees, although I will say I think it's still too low. And hopefully we will look at this at another time when we realize that only 500,000 of the more than $20 million required to manage toxic emissions is collected by these fees. It is entirely too small. And by raising them today, really we're only going to get $4.5 million more in revenue. So we're still way under what we need as an agency to try to manage these toxic emissions. And I will tell you, as a city councilwoman and as a member of Congress, I represented communities that have historically been severely impacted by toxic emissions. So much so that Joe knows our communities of Wilmington and San Pedro, I mean, it's called the diesel death zone. We have more instances of cancer and asthma-related illnesses than any other place. And then now, as a member of the Board of Supervisors, I represent the city of Paramount. And it was shocking to me to see the toxic emissions that were being emitted by companies across the street from schools. There was one company that was emitting 300 times the level of hexavalent chromium that was allowed, 300 times. And because we didn't have the AQMD didn't have the resources and the staff, it was left to school teachers to take on their time off to make a phone call when they began smelling the noxious odors that were coming from these companies. And if you want to talk about schools, and one gentleman talked about the measure that failed to produce more revenue for our schools. You know what hurts our schools is kids who can't go to school because of asthma-related illnesses. Because we know that schools are funded by daily attendance, and unless you have a doctor's note that gives you that excuse, schools are not getting the revenue they need because many kids, I'm sure it's just such a natural occurrence that they have asthma that they stay home from school. They probably don't have the time to get to a doctor to get a doctor's notice. So we're losing money to our schools, where our kids are suffering from lack of being able to attend school because of polluters. And I know there's other revenue that we're looking to help fund what we need to do to control these emissions, but I think the polluters ought to be the one paying these fees. That makes the most sense for me, and I don't think the public should pay for this. Just because we have the largest port complex in the country, 44% of all the trade comes through our ports, why should our residents pay for that with bad health? So someone across the country can get their flat screen TV on a shelf in Target. So I am definitely for increasing these fees, colleagues. I wish they were higher, and I hope we look at it again. I know businesses are concerned about this, but it is a minimal increase, really. And in terms of when we collect them, I just can't, in all good conscience, raise the fees, knowing how badly we need them to do our job, and then have a year lag time before we begin collecting them. I think we owe it to the public to raise these fees today and to begin collecting them in 2 years as opposed to 3 years. Again, I'm new on this body. I have never served on AQMD in my entire life. I appeared before AQMD when I was representing my community in Paramount to try to get some justice for that community. But, we would, I'll go on record saying I'm in favor of us creating a taxing district that will help us also raise more fees. I think that is facing serious challenges in Sacramento and elsewhere. This is something we can do. We have the authority to raise the fees ourselves. We don't have to put this to a vote for the taxpayers. We don't have to get Sacramento involved in this. This is something that we can do today, and I think it is our obligation, it is our commitment, and is our absolute moral right to do this today on behalf of the public's health. And I, for one, will vote to increase it, and I also am going to make a motion right now that we implement it in 2 years as opposed to 3, and I hope I get a second.
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem McKellen, please no clapping. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I understand it, we've already approved the fee increase, that today we're just talking about
don't think so.
whether we're going to.
No, I don't think so. We
Yes, we
continued
did.
it.
Last meeting, we did that.
No, we continued it.
If you look at the item, we're only determining that this amendment is
I
not
heard
subject to
we
CEQA and
continued
that
it.
we're amending the rule to have a 2 or 3 year term. So the fee increase has already been
We asked for
voted.
staff clarification.
I think it was continued today. I think the.
Supervisor Hahn, if
Oh,
the staff
sorry.
was willing to answer, and that would be
Okay.
a good final determination that way.
Yeah, it's our understanding that the, what was approved last time was everything but the fee increase and the time frame for the fee increase.
Well, the item that's listed today, the recommendations don't include anything about a fee increase. It just talks about CEQA.
Excuse me, Mayor McCallum, the recommended item probably was drafted not quite as clearly as it could be, but it does say recommend amending Rule 301, and the reference there is to amend Rule 301 to adopt the increase in the toxics fees. And then the second reference there is just to indicate that the board wanted the option to consider either a 2-year or a 3-year. So what we did last month was we adopted a CPI increase for all the other fees, and we continued this issue regarding the toxic fees till today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I have staff clarify for me why they originally were recommending a 3-year phase-in? Or phase-out, phase-in, whatever it's called.
The question is why we originally recommended a 3-year versus 2-year. I touched on it in the presentation. I can go into more detail. So the 3-year phase-in, and again, the proposal was staff's, the original proposal by staff, was to have no fee increase in year 1 and then 50% in year 2 and 50% in year 3. And the reason being that we wanted to give several reasons. We wanted to give facilities time to refine their emissions estimates. We know that for many years they have been reporting emissions with not as much scrutiny as they might otherwise have because the fee implications were quite low. And we know that some of the facilities use default emission factors or older emission factors or not quite applicable emission factors. We can only audit a subset, so we don't catch all that. This will likely have them take another look at their reporting and their emissions and perhaps have some refinement. So one reason staff recommended the 1-year lag was to provide time to get more that accurate data before the first part of the fee increase kicked in. We also, delaying a year, we know there's some uncertainty with the final rule that CARB is going to come out with. Hopefully in the next few months we'll know more. We have been hearing that, again, it's not going to be a big impact to the universe of facilities that report in the early years, but we don't know that for sure. So it does give us another year to potentially come back next year when we come back with Regulation 3 and our budget to make some small changes if there's any unintended consequences of additional facilities having to report and then the fees, the fees that would come in. So those are kind of the two main reasons. I guess the third reason is this is the final year of the 3-year phase-in of a permit fee increase. So next year will be the third phase of that. So this would put this fee increase the year after so that both fee increases wouldn't occur on the same year. That was staff's thinking and the reasons behind the recommendation.
Supervisor Bartlett?
Thank you. I think that we do need to look at the fees and get to cost recovery someday. We are still, as Supervisor Hahn said, even with these increases, we're still woefully short of the $20 million full cost recovery. And it's a balancing act. It's not an easy thing to ask. We've got about 1,500 facilities that are going to be affected with these increases, and some of them are going to have a very significant increase, even going from the 500,000 to I think the 5.4 million. And then, as I've expressed before, I had concerns about the backlog and the workload associated with the fee increase. With regard to the source testing in particular. And I know that staff, and I appreciate that staff is really working to address the issue of the backlog, and I'm just wanting to make sure at this point we don't have an even greater backlog depending on the implementation timeline. But I think given the potential impact of some of the facilities, At this point, I'm more comfortable with a 3-year versus a 2-year, but I think in getting from the 5.4 million to the 20 million of full cost recovery, for the facilities that are affected out there and for us to get to full cost recovery, I think if we could have some type of an automatic escalator that is built in at some point, so that facilities out there and going from the 5.4 million to the 20 million, which is our full cost recovery, they know what to expect in future years, if that's possible to plan for that. So I'd like to ask the question of staff at this point on what we can do to help the facilities that are affected anticipate what some of those future increases are going to be for the fees.
So there's so many variables that are impacted by this. Part of the issue involves the level of funding that we do get from Sacramento with regards to implementation of these programs. But if you look at the fee structure itself, the fact that we have a baseline fee, we have a toxicity-weighted fee, and we have a source-related fee, I think that when you sort of look at rules in general, part of the challenge that we look at is not only do we want compliance, but can we actually reduce emissions? And this structure is designed to have people the opportunity to reduce their emissions and thereby reduce their fees. So one of the things that we've committed to doing, in addition to looking at the source testing backlog, is to assessing where we see the funding and where we see the revenues. Because if we're fortunate enough that the emission fees collected are declining, it's because we're seeing a decline in actual emissions. That's what we want. And we still need to make sure that we recover those costs. So what I would commit and what we would support is to come back to the board on an annual basis once we've had a chance to review the emission inventories, and we can provide information back and then have an idea of what it looks like the year forward.
Okay, that makes sense. So as they are more compliant and the emissions are reduced, then our cost recovery number comes from 20 million and is dropped downward. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Robinson?
Just one quick question from staff first. In what makes up the 20 million, is any of that impacted by AB 617 itself?
Yeah, so if you look at that chart, about half of that 20 million was actually AB 617 expenses. Not all of the AB 617 expenses, but the estimated expenses that are related to stationary sources and toxics. So it's about 10 million, which is roughly about half of what we've been receiving from the legislature, again, uncertain in year to year. So there's some testimony that we were taking from 617. We've accounted for the 617 expenses in this chart. So we're not taking from 617. We're trying to cover 617 costs in the future in case we can't get that annual appropriation in the state budget.
Sure, and that was my understanding, and I think that all of the air districts have this exact same challenge. So they have a partially funded mandate coming from the state legislature, and we're trying to make up the shortfall and trying to figure out exactly how we do that. So thank you very much for that. I too am in favor of a 3-year phase-in, and probably for similar reasons, but mainly the word that jumps out to me the most is accuracy. And hearing that both from staff as well as some public commenters and on both sides of this particular issue. So we want to make sure that we're accurate in the sense that we have much less underreporting. And we want to make sure that there's also fairness for those who aren't paying for something that they're not actually emitting. And so I think that providing an adequate amount of time, and again, it was the initial recommendation from staff to spend that time to conduct source tests and refine the estimation methods. I think that's really important for us. And as we look at this moving forward, this is a fee that will be in place in perpetuity. Unless we get to that, the fee is almost zero because we have zero emissions, which is our ultimate goal. That's everyone's, is how can we get those fees to be reduced because emissions are reducing. And, at the end of the day, what these funds do is help us try to understand what's going on, communicate to the community, and in some ways generate some new rules that are pushing the industry forward in reducing emissions. But ultimately, the emission reductions come from new equipment that facilities that are currently emitting can use to improve. And that's where we're going to see emission reductions. It's the upgrading of equipment, the changing out of equipment, whether we're talking about things like diesel trucks, we're talking about emission capture control systems at metal plating facilities, whatever it might be. And so, again, it's that accuracy word that jumps out at me the most, and I just want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to make sure that people are paying what they're supposed to according to the fee schedule we have, and that no one's paying more than they should, because I don't think that would be fair to anyone either. So that's why I'm in favor of the 3-year phase-in at this point. Again, it's a 1-year delay, but it's going to be in place in perpetuity. This portion of the fee, and it'll increase over time, but will potentially still be here 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. So, we're just talking about trying to spend that extra year to make sure that we've got the actual accurate number that each facility needs to pay. So with that said, I'm going to make a substitute motion that we move to a 3-year phase-in.
All right, I have Mayor Mitchell in the queue. I'm sorry, Councilmember Cacchiotti.
Thank you, Vice Chair. If you can put that as the graph up of it was a percentage of businesses. The next one, later one, Paul, I think that's the one that the impact on final phase-in. So there's going to be basically 40% of the business will not be affected at all. And then I think you said up to almost 70%, almost 3/4 of those $1,000. Is that accurate? And if you can walk me through once, Dr. Fine, just let's say we approve a 2-year phase-in versus 3. Walk me through just one company from the time we approve it today, how you're going to go through source testing till we implement the fee. Give me an example just so I understand that versus a 3-year.
So again, at the beginning of the year, there's a emissions reporting period.
January 1st, 2020.
Yeah, so the next reporting period will be January 2020, and they have until mid-March to complete that. And they're looking backwards at their 2019 emissions. When they report those emissions, they have to estimate what they are, and there's various ways they can estimate what they are. They can use an emission factor out of a book for that process, some of which are old, or they can look at some source testing to get a number that's more applicable or specifically applicable to their particular process and their particular emissions.
Is that difficult to do, or they just call a company up? What do you do?
They call a company. In the case of toxics, it's not inexpensive. It could be anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000, $40,000, depending on the amount of toxics you're measuring. If you had a 2-year phase-in, we expect there would be some activity in that area for the rest of this year. One thing to remember is the number of certified source test companies out there, it's not infinite, it's limited. So there would be quite a bit of a demand for those test companies we expect to go out. If they had more time, there might be a little bit more time to schedule those tests into 2020 so they can report their 2020 emissions in 2021.
And so you said sometime in mid-March, so they've got a couple-month period window to do the source testing, or how long is that window?
The source testing can occur
all year?
Between now, at any point, essentially, as long as it's an approved source test.
Okay.
It could even be a test from last year, as long as it's indicative of their tests and it's been approved.
And how long have we had meetings on this? How many months, talking about raising the toxic fees and things?
Started in February. Well, it's part of the budget process, so February, March is when we started raising the idea of raising the toxics fees, toxics emission fees.
Thank you.
Mayor Mitchell.
To make sure I'm right.
So just to follow up on Michael's questions, if they are going to report on 2019 emissions, which they would have to do if we adopt the 2-year phase-in, but they actually pay those fees in when to actually pay the fee. They do the reporting between now and January 1st, 2020, or?
They do the reporting, but at the end of the year, they're not done with their emissions yet at the end of the year. So they have between January and March of 2020 to report 2019 emissions.
But they have between now and January 1st, 2020 to evaluate those emissions. Is that right?
Sorry, can you repeat the
No.
question? Sorry.
I think they'd have to evaluate them after after
Yeah,
December 31st.
so they report into March, then we have to look at those, and we can't audit them all, but we audit as many as we can, and then calculate the fees, and I'm not sure the fee due date, is it in the fee is due, actually the fee is due at about the same time, yeah. So the question is whether there's enough time for the rest of 2019 to do that refinement so that can all occur at the beginning of 2020. We only have another 6 months for that, or you want to give 18 months for that refinement and begin the reporting that happens in 2021.
And then there were two issues raised about that. One is the source test process and the backlog with that. And the other one was the default emission factors, which need updating, correct? So
yes.
Talk to me first about the source test process backlog and what you're doing about it.
Yes, Mayor Mitchell. So the source test engineering group is located in Monitoring Analysis Division. And there's several, so all source tests are not created equal. So there are some source tests which have priority review because they're required for a permit to operate. And in fact, those are the ones that we have a really good handle on what the inventory is. But there's also source tests which are required by the myriad of rules and regulations that we have on the books. And those source tests are the ones that we still don't, where staff is working internally to determine what is that universe of number of source tests. And I think those are the ones that a lot of the stakeholders and facilities are discussing as they have not seen our review for those because they come into various points within the agency. And so we're working on a way to track those in the future to ensure that we do have a very quick turnaround, or at least a timely turnaround on those. But the ones that I think the industry and that Phil is discussing, if they want to do an emissions factor calculation, that probably does not comply with the same type of accuracy that a source test for some of our rules would require. So as they go forward in time, as we try to assess these fees, they would likely require a different source test and do triplicate runs, for example. And so, as I mentioned, the inventory that we have currently, I'd say it's about 800 per year. But we can do 700 a year as our current estimate. But we believe that once this rule comes in place, we're going to get a lot of review requests for protocol review before they hire the source test company to actually do the source test.
So is it your opinion that the district can be equipped and ready to deal with this if a 2-year phase-in is adopted?
As with any challenge, Mayor Mitchell, we would rise to that challenge. However, having an additional year would probably be beneficial. But if it were a 2-year phase-in, we could certainly meet the challenge.
Okay. So one thing that occurs to me is the urgency of what we do. It arises in part because of what we have seen at Paramount and at Exide. Mostly Paramount, though. That came up very suddenly. We had to rise to the occasion very quickly, and we spent quite a lot of money in that whole process in doing the testing to determine what those emissions were and where they were coming from. So there's the urgency because of public health. People were very affected by that. That's a carcinogen. That had immense implications and impact on the people affected. The other thing is the urgency that's created simply by AB 617 and what we're required to do under 617. Many of the people that came this morning are from those communities that are part of environmental justice communities and part of the 617 program. So I am persuaded that we can rise to the challenge of a 2-year phase-in, that there is a strong need for that money and for it immediately. With a 2-year phase-in, you get the money now, and that our staff, our incredible staff, can rise to the challenge of what is before us. They have done it before, and I foresee that they would do it again. But we do need the funds. That's the other thing. We have a lot of work in front of us. And the funding from the state for this toxic work is not guaranteed. In fact, the state has said, we expect the air districts to go out and find the money, and this would be our task. Overall, the overriding mission is public health. And when we're talking about toxics, we're talking about an extreme impact on public health. And that was what AB 617 was designed to address. We've dealt with the regional air quality requirements that are put down by the federal government for many years. Those have a slower impact on our population, but toxics do not. They have immediate impacts. And for that reason, I think there's a certain urgency in the timing of this that we need to pay attention to, and also the need for money to address those challenges. So I would be supporting a 2-year phase-in on this measure. Thank you.
Supervisor Hahn?
Well, thank you. So one of my questions, so basically, this amendment to the rule is restructuring, and that's what we're talking about, why it's going to take more studying and figuring it out. If we implement the 2-year, which again, I'm still for, and I think Mayor Mitchell made a very compelling case on why we need this money now. If we say we're only going to be collecting 50%, either way, we either collect 50% in year 2 and then the other 50% in year 3, or we collect 50% for sure. If you set a fee and you begin collecting the 50% year 1, if you find different information or things change, that second 50%, can that be tweaked one way or the other? Can that, or once you implement the fee, is that it until we change a fee again?
I think the challenge would be 1 year's worth of data may not be sufficient to fully evaluate whether or not a change is warranted. But I'll also see if Dr. Fine has an additional comment.
But again, we got to do this, and we think staff is going to rise to the occasion. I'm just giving us, can we collect, can we do both? Can we implement it in 2 years and still continue to refine it and get more accurate, and then maybe that second year, that second half of the fee gets changed one way or the other?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. We can do both. We can be accurate and we can implement it within 2 years.
Supervisor Perez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I think for the most part, my questions have been answered already by the questions that were asked by my colleagues. But if I may, Mr. Chair and members, indulge me for a bit so I can speak to our Latino community. Le quiero dar las gracias a nuestra gente que vino de diferentes lugares, especialmente en un evento como esto que es un poco difícil de vez en cuando, y abogar para nuestra gente, nuestra comunidad, porque es importante. Nuestras comunidades siempre han estado en estos niveles de discriminación, ¿verdad? Ustedes lo sienten cada día. Pero ustedes, como nuestras mamás, nuestras abuelas, tías, yo les quiero dar las gracias por estar aquí. Ustedes son la fuerza de la familia y de la comunidad. Y pues me da mucho gusto que están aquí abogando. Este proceso es muy importante. Supervisor Hahn mentioned earlier that she appreciates folks that come here, that advocate for their communities, and I think it's inspiring, quite frankly. And I appreciate it because it's not easy. It's hard. And especially when English is not your primary language. So I just wanted to state out loud to our mothers and our grandmothers that are out here in the audience that took the courage to speak up today. I think that's impressive and honorable because they're doing it obviously not only for their community, their families, but they're doing it, in my opinion, for South Coast Air Quality Management District. So I just wanted to make sure I let them know that I appreciate the fact that they're empowered and they're raising their voice. On the other notes, I agree with the 2-year plan. If we can rise to the occasion, let's do so. I appreciate Mayor Mitchell really moving us through those questions that you had and staff being able to answer that. And I think it's pretty clear that we can get it done. The actual fee increase, I think it's important. Obviously, eventually, maybe we'll have to take another look. Supervisor Hahn, I am in agreement with you on that. But I also appreciate Supervisor Robinson's concerns on, and this is what we heard earlier from folks as well, is the accuracy of the data and the reporting. I think that goes both ways, right? We need to make sure that our business community reports the information correctly, but we also have to be clear on what we want them to report as an AQMD. And so let's just make sure that we continuously work together and consistently to get that done. But with that said, though, I just want to be on the record that I think the 2-year timeline makes sense, and I also agree with the fee increase. Thank you, Ms. Chair, members.
Senator Delgado?
Yes, that I was actually going to speak in Spanish too. Nada más les quería dar el respecto a los que vinieron de muchas comunidades, porque ya sé que es difícil venir aquí. I feel I'm the only Latina on this board, and we represent areas that most of the air quality impacts affect the Latino communities the most. And so I feel very responsible for making decisions that keep that in mind. But I'm new to this board, my second meeting, of course, and I'm conflicted because staff is asking for 3 years. They know what resources they have and what they need to balance. And they have done amazing work to meet air quality goals. Nobody can refute that. And they're asking for 3 years. We have so many other priorities that actually directly impact air quality. This fee will do very little to actually change air quality that's needed, especially in the desert areas. This fee, we're actually going to get less as air quality increases or improves. So it's not a direct impact. I would rather have staff focus on getting additional funding to get all these diesel trucks off the roads. I'd rather them focus on getting that sales tax on the ballot. If they need time, they're asking that for a reason. I'm not as concerned about the business interests, and I believe that they should pay their fair share. There should be a fee assessed to that. I grew up in Boyle Heights, and I work in Bell Gardens, so I care about who you all are here to represent. That's what I care about. But if we had a fee to actually get diesel trucks off the road, that would actually impact air quality. That's real impact to poor communities, not necessarily the rhetoric that we're hearing about this particular fee. So I'm actually trying to make informed decisions that truly impact poor communities. I'd rather work on getting leaf blowers that work for real practicing people instead of kind of focusing on things that don't really make an impact.
That's my last speaker in the queue, or last board member. Bay, I have a quick question for you. You have a There's actually two items in here. The first one is determining that this is not affected by CEQA. Do you need a separate motion on that? Or can that be part of the motions that were currently made?
Yeah, I think that would, it would be subsumed within the motion that was made.
So I had a first motion by Supervisor Hahn and then a second from Roberts. So we will take the vote on the second, the substitute motion. And so the substitute motion, does anyone need it restated? This would be for the 3 years. All right, we'll go ahead and open the roll for the substitute motion for, go ahead and sticking to the staff recommendation for 3 years. I'm going to vote no. We already knew most of that. No disrespect. All right, that motion fails to pass 6-6. So then we'll go ahead and take a vote on Supervisor Hahn's motion for the 2 years.
I asked for an aye vote. Yeah, but you're just going to feel about the same thing.
Maybe I'll be more moved by my asking for the aye vote instead of just saying I'm voting no. Yay, thank you.
And that item passes 8-4. All right. With that, we will go on to item number 29. Do you have a staff report on this?
No staff presentation. This is a rule that was adopted, amendments to a rule that were adopted last month. This is just an item to direct staff to submit it into the state implementation plan. We weren't able to do that last month because of a minor noticing issue. No changes to the rule, just directing staff to submit to the SIP.
Okay. Do you have a speaker on this? Harvey Etter? Harvey, come on down.
Good morning. I'm Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition. I've got concerns of anything that takes away CEQA review, and there's a big tendency to try to lessen it. In terms of crafts, my brother and nephew are commercial fishermen up in Oregon, and I know they're very interested in the new technologies and whatnot. Coatings is pretty basic. I'm concerned that it's not going to get the kind of overview, especially in terms of in the context of a just and equitable immediate total solar conversion, which is what we've been saying since litigation in '92 with the district, and not getting anywhere. Maybe now, but anyway, my brother tells me he thinks that all these that we've basically got to build new stuff. I don't know. I knew some folks that worked on using wind power for like super tankers and stuff like that. So it could be hybrids anyway. I don't know if I should just stay up here because anyway, maybe somebody else has got comments besides me. I guess obviously they do. No? Should I go sit down and see if somebody else wants to make public comments?
If you're done, that'd be great. You can take on the.
I probably should take advantage of the time, but I'm done.
All right, thank you. I don't have any other public comments on this item. Do we need a vote on this item then, Faye? We need a motion.
We need a vote. It could be
Okay. So they need a
unanimous
motion
voice
and a
vote.
second on this item. Does anyone have any other, unless there's any board member questions? Would someone like to make a motion? I have a motion and a second. Any opposed? So moved. All right, that brings us to public comment. I have one public commenter, Harvey Etter.
Okay, I want to hit a couple of things. I'm Harvey Etter, I'm speaking for myself and for the Public Solar Power Coalition, got limited time. The future of the investor-owned utilities and why we've already paid under the Davis administration like 20 years ago when we had the first energy crisis. Well, we go back to the 70s for energy crises and whatnot. But, damn, I just went on a tangent here. The state spent over $40 billion subsidizing, last time they went bankrupt, direct out of the government funds. There was a commissioner of the PUC before FERC 3 years ago that said $37 billion. Numbers could be into the hundreds. The fires aren't going away. Climate change, we've got to convert. We've got to do it equitably, justly, as quickly as possible within those restraints. The sun varies like from 1 to 5 times anywhere on the planet in insolation. It's something new. It can affect production systems and have the chance of being the biggest cultural change since the elimination of human slavery for the energy system. It's how we do it is really important. We got to think about it. I'm incorporating by reference, maybe some of you, probably not many, maybe I'm the only one. Steppenwolf, the pusher, okay? We got an opiate crisis, yeah. We are oil and gas junkies, fossil fuels and nukes. We're strung out. We got to kick it, and we got to kick it quick. And to deny it, the stuff in D.C. and stuff. And I heard this guy Harper that they're not going to use anything after 2040 for estimates on climate change. They're going to take the worst case and the best case out. Hey, it's on. Anyway, here's the 16 plan on what is it, thumb drive. It's for you folks. I got it from you. Missing in here, among other things, trying to organize it. We've got 66 documents and what's on the sub-documents, and there's 2 books missing. Piketty's from 14, Capitalism in the 21st Century, and the board member from 350, Naomi Klein. This changes everything, climate versus capitalism. So those are important things. And we'll continue to organize this. And as per the February 8th meeting of the Administrative Committee and that you want information, Dr. Burke, we're still working on it.
Hey, thank you, Harvey, for your public
thank
comments. Hold on. You have, we're going to go into closed session. You also asked to speak on closed session items. But I would ask you actually speak to one of the closed session items, if that's the case.
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't able, to study stuff like I should have. I got to get here a couple days in advance and do that anyway. So I'll just pass.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that concludes our comments on public comment and closed session. Bay, would you please take us into closed session?
Yes, sir. It is necessary for the board to recess to closed session pursuant to Government Code Sections 54956.9 sub A and 54956.9 sub D sub 1 to confer with its counsel regarding pending litigation which has been initiated formally and to which the SCAQMD is a party. The actions are in the matter of SCAQMD v. Aerocraft Heat Treating Comp. Inc. and Anaplex Corp. SCAQMD Hearing Board case number 6066-1, order for abatement. SCAQMD v. Anaplex Los Angeles Superior Court case number BC 608322, Paramount Hexavalent Chromium. People of the State of California, XREL SCAQMD v. Exide Technologies, Inc., Los Angeles Superior Court case number BC 5335288. INRI Exide Technologies, U.S. Bankruptcy Court, District of Delaware, case number 13-11482, KJC, bankruptcy case. It is also necessary for the board to recess to close session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, Sub A, and 54956.9, Sub D, Sub 4, to consider initiation of litigation, 2 cases, seek leave to intervene in Association of Irritated Residents v. US EPA, 9th Circuit, number 19-71223, SJV 8-hour ozone. It is also necessary for the board to recess to close session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, Sub D, Sub 2, to confer with its counsel because there is significant exposure to litigation against the SCAQMD. Email from Somerset Perry, California Deputy Attorney General, dated March 13, 2019, regarding notice of violation P61321. It is also necessary to recess to close session pursuant to Government Code Sections 54956.9 Sub A and 54956.9 Sub D, Sub 1, to confer with its counsel regarding pending litigation which has been initiated formally into which the SCAQMD is a party. The actions are in the matter of SCAQMD v. Browning Ferris Industries of California, Inc., DBA Sunshine Canyon Landfill, SCAQMD Hearing Board Case Number 3448-14. A report of the reportable actions taken during closed session will be provided to the clerk of the board. The meeting is adjourned.